Welcome to Marathonology. Marathonology is a program about facing the destructive patterns of our lives and finding principles how to break those patterns. We are using the principles behind the 12 steps, which are primarily known from the AA environment, but which have also proven to be efficient tools to work with different issues in life. During the program, you will meet Vibeke Frederiksen, who is a psychologist and who has personal experience with working with this program, and she will guide us into some of the major and general problems that we face as human beings, and also show us some practical tools as to how we can work with those issues. I'm going to give you an introduction into the principles behind the step and also show you how it relates to the biblical world. And we have arrived at step number 12, and it sounds like this. Having had a spiritual experience as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
We have now come all the way to the 12th step, and in this process we have used a lot of time looking at our own lives, reflecting on our own behavior and things like that. And now is the time where we start to change focus and we start looking to other people. And our focus on ourselves has been necessary, but it is also necessary for us to start focusing on people around us. In our world today, there are so many unfree people, and there might be people around you that might have a joy and might find the freedom in the steps that you have been through now. So what we do is that we seek to invest in other people around us. We try to share love by sharing our own story with people who might need the same process as we have been through. What we do when we share with other people is that we try to share what has been good for me. We don't want an attitude toward other people where we are domineering or where we look like people who know it all and then come to tell other people what to do. So what we do, we simply share our own lives. And that makes it possible for other persons to take and receive whatever they can use from our stories and leave the rest behind. It is also important for us to share our lives for our own sake. Very often we experience when we start sharing what has happened to us in the program is that the moment we start telling other people, we experience it ourselves. And we suddenly realize what has happened, how big the difference is, and the big change that has happened in our lives. So it's good for us to share. Another thing is that very often we tend to forget even major events in our life, even the most important happenings, the most valuable things. And it is important for us that we don't forget about the steps in our lives. Because when we are reminded what the steps has done, we're reminded about the principles that are important for us, and we are reminded about the lifestyle that we seek to live out in every circumstances in our lives. So to share what have happened to us is good for us ourselves also, and it might even help other people. When we are reminded about the steps in our daily lives, we are reminded about our values and that it is important. We are reminded about our values, about living authentic lives, about keeping a good relationship to ourselves and to other persons and to God. And we are reminded about a value to live a life where we share love with other people. And a good start today might be to share your story with someone else who might have the joy in it, to listen in it, and then the joy to experience the same freedom as you have in the steps.
We have finally arrived at the last step, step number 12, and it goes like this. Having had a spiritual experience as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. In this step, we talk about having had a spiritual experience. To many of us, that would be quite mysterious words, and we wouldn't really know what do they cover, and we may have some strange images connected to these words. But in the 12-step environment, talking about having a spiritual experience like this, we talk about having an awakening, to wake up to reality about who God is, wake up to reality about who I am myself, and to wake up to the reality about how my world is, how do I respond and react to the people around me. So this is really what we are talking about when we talk about having a spiritual experience in this last step. So we are looking back and we are realizing that this is a process that has been going on in our lives. We do not say that it's finished, but we see it as something which is going on and which needs to continue in the long run in the way we live our lives from this day on. In the Bible, we find an example of a woman who really experienced to wake up in this sense in a very dramatic and radical way. It's a story about the Samaritan woman who met Jesus at the well. And this was a woman who had failed in so many ways in life. She was isolated from the fellowship with the others at the village, and she had really ruined her own life by choosing bad decisions and bad solutions to the problems that she was dealing with. All we know is that her way of solving her problems, of finding ways in life, was to have a new man and a new man and a new man and a new man again. And she didn't really find solutions, but she just kept on taking the wrong choices in life. And now she was isolated. Now she was in a situation with no success, in a really bad shape in life, you could say. And now she meets Jesus at this well, and we find a wonderful conversation between Jesus and this woman. And we see in this conversation that she really needed a wake up. She really needed to wake up to the reality about God, about herself, and about the world around her. And if we take the first things first, that she needed to wake up to the reality about who God is, we see that Jesus leads her to that place in a very significant way by asking her to give him some water. And in her reply, he replies back, well, if you knew who it was that was giving you this request, this question, you would ask him for water and he would give you the living water. So now Jesus starts to open up the truth about himself, open up the fact that she was actually talking to God himself. And the woman is quite hesitant and she doesn't really grasp this, and she says to Jesus, well, do you really have the power? Do you really have what it takes? You don't have a bucket, and even our forefather Jacob, who made this well, he wouldn't be able to deal with this without a bucket. And in this sense, maybe this woman resembles many of us in many ways. Many of us can identify with these questions in our relationships to God. We say, well, my problem is complex. My situation is special. Does God really have what it takes to help me to solve these issues in my life? We may also say, well, my experience shows me that God doesn't have what it takes. I haven't had experiences of God really intervening in my life in a significant way. I haven't things in my luggage that shows me that He's really able to deal with this big stuff of my life that I can't deal with myself. So in many ways, we might identify with this woman. But during the conversation, she opens up to a new reality and she starts seeing Jesus in a new light. And she ends up realizing that she's really talking to the Messiah, the one who has the anointing, the one who has the ability really to step into her life and to transform her life completely. And this is also what is happening during this story. The second aspect of the story is for her to wake up to the realities about herself. And also in this aspect, we see that Jesus leads her to that place. He asks her questions that forces her to face her own situation. He says to her, go and fetch your husband. And she says, well, I don't have one. And here she tries to make her usual cover up about the realities of her life, knowing that she had plenty of men in her story, and knowing also that she had one at home who was not formally her husband, but still the one that Jesus was asking to meet. And through that conversation, Jesus forces her to see that reality in her, to face that reality and to deal with it to some degree, which is also the reason why she ends up really opening up to the fact that he might be the Messiah, the one who can really help her. She needed to come to that place. She needed to see eye to eye with her own helplessness, to be able to grasp the grace of God, to be able to grasp who Jesus really was, and to receive whatever he wanted to give to her. And then we have the third aspect also, that she has to somehow relate in a new way to the people around her. And we see that big change in the story, because coming to this well alone was a sign of her being totally isolated. Normally the women of the village would go together around the same time during the day, but she went at a time during the day when it was probably the most hot time of the day, and nobody else would go there. So obviously she wanted to go alone. Obviously she didn't want to face the other women of the village. So she was isolated in her relationship to people around her. And we can also identify with this. We might not be in the same dramatic situation as this woman, but we know the kind of isolation where we know that we are around people, but we are not really in fellowship with them, because we have so many kinds of cover up in our lives. So even though that there are many people around us, we are still isolated, we are still alone. And this was the fact with this woman. But in the story, she ends up running back to the village, not to hide in her own house, but to gather people around her and to tell the story that she had been trying to reveal and suppress for so many years. So she tells a story about this man that she met at the well and who told her everything about her life. So now she just blows her cover up and she tells everything to the people who of course knew beforehand. So they are really touched by her story, and they end up going to the well themselves and explore the adventure that this woman had been telling them about. So here we have a strong spiritual awakening from this woman. And in this we also see the fact that she was the one who was able to reach the people of the village. Before her going back to the village, the disciples of Jesus had been there. And this was 12 well-trained disciples, people who had heard the message from Jesus about the kingdom of God, who would be able to tell other people about it. They were trained in that. They were people who were trained in seeing the miraculous things happening around Jesus, and also they had been used for that themselves. But as far as we can see, they had no success in communicating to the people of this village. So 12 well-trained disciples couldn't achieve anything when it comes to passing on the message of love, the message of the kingdom of God to the people of this village. But the woman, she was able to do this. And it's the same thing with our lives. We have people around us who see the change in our lives, and we may find ourselves that, well, the changes in my life, even though that I have been going through this process, probably they're not that big. I'm still in the process. There are still things that needs to be fixed. I still have my struggles and so on and so forth. But still there would be people around you who really sees that something is beginning to happen in your life, and they see that there is a change, a transformation taking place in you. And those people would be your village. And you might think that, well, other people would be more equipped, would be more well-trained to reach these people. But the fact is that probably you are the one who have the ability, because of your testimony, because of your life, because of you being the one who have lived close to these people, you are the one who would be able to pass on the principles that works, the principles that you have discovered yourself, the realities about God, the realities about life, the realities about we as people need to face the truth about the world that we live in, the truth about God, the truth about ourselves, to be able to live in freedom. You are probably the one who is the most efficient to reach your people, your village with this message. In this step, we also talk about living these principles out in everything that we do, in every aspect of life. And this is a big thing to grasp for us. And of course, if we should sit down in every detail of life and think through, well, how do I use this, and what would my strategy be, and what principle to use, it would be in a way we wouldn't be able to do so. It would be too much. But a picture that might help you, which at least have helped me, is from the golf course. Not that I am an experienced golf player myself, I've only been doing it a couple of times, but I've been together with experienced golf players, and I could see that when they were about to meet the challenge of doing this, they kind of measured the wind, and they kind of were looking at the distance, and then they chose the tool that they wanted to use, the club that they wanted to use to reach the target. So either they took number 5 or number 7, or they had these numbers for this. And in a sense, it's the same way that we are doing with the steps. We face different situations in life, different challenges in life. And now that we have learned about these principles, we are kind of pondering about this. And then we choose, well, probably in this situation, I need to do a step number 3 or 1 or 5 or 7. In this sense, we try to live out these principles, and we try to use the steps in the different aspects of life. So in one sense, we are finalizing this whole process that we have been going through, these 12 steps. But in another sense, we just start the journey of the rest of our lives. And now we take all these steps and we put them into practice, and we use them to maintain the freedom that we have experienced so far, but also to develop that freedom in the life that we are living from this day on.
We have now heard again the introduction to the 12th step, and I will share with you how you can integrate it in your life and work with it in your daily lives. What I want you to start with when you start the 12th step is that you write down your story. Write down what happened to you, where you were in your life before you started, and what happened on the way. And doing that, also include the feelings you had on the way. Maybe the feelings of this is not worth doing, this is hopeless, and all those things that you experienced on the way. And also write down the joy you have now about your new lifestyle in the area you worked on. When you have done that, I want you to find a good friend and share your story with him. Maybe this person will even tell you that he can tell the change that's happened in your life, and it will be a great joy for you. I also want to congratulate you that you are now through the 12 steps. It's important to celebrate, and we will be gladful with you that you came through the process. Maybe you still experience that there are areas in your life where you experience this unfreedom still. And I just want to remind you that the 12 steps is a lifestyle, and the freedom is something we grow into step by step. So just stay with the steps, stay with the principles, and practice them in your life, and I'm sure your freedom will increase, and you will experience a more and more free life as you live with the steps in your life. Maybe some of you have the feeling that I didn't really come through the steps. I still struggle with the same destructive pattern in my life, and I don't really feel that this process gave me what it was supposed to give. And if you feel it in that way, I will invite you to share this with another person who have the experience with the steps. Try to discuss your situation with this person, and go maybe together with this person carefully through every step you have been through to see if there was anything on the way that you missed out, any step you didn't finish, because that will prevent you from coming to the goal in the end. If you still have struggles with the steps, please make sure that you stay connected with other people and you seek the help you need. That is important for you, and we don't want anyone to be stuck in an unfree life. There's a way for you, so please hold on.
I hope this program was beneficial for you in your situation. If you want to explore this further, I will recommend this book, Marathonology. In the book, you will find stories from people who have been working with the steps. You will find the principles behind the steps and exercises that you can work with in your life and in your situation. And if you want to, you're also very welcome to check out our website.